Today, you're going to find out that your Bibles is a New Age book and it's been kept a secret for 2,000 years. It's all about numerology.
Talk about gatekeepers. Talk about gatekeepers. Talk about gatekeepers. I'll show you where the key is within us. So, do you remember that verse? It got me intrigued. It says, I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. What if I told you that you have the keys to hell and heaven, the heaven, and that you got them at birth, and they were hidden in plain sight? Now look at the clavicle. Does it not look like and remind you of horns? Like I was talking about the ram earlier. That's how it all connects. Now I know you guys are on it and good researchers. It does, doesn't it? It just reminds you of horns. Is that where they got the horned God from? Hell and angel wings from heaven? Because look, if I turn round the skeleton, does it not look like angel wings on the back and devil horns on the front and the chest? It does to me. That's just what absolutely blew my mind when I started looking at it like this, guys. Have a look at this verse and tell me it's not wow. I will place on his shoulder the key to the house of David. What he opens, no one can shut. And what he shuts, no one can open. Now, you can all depend on what you think. It's that I'm showing you that the keys are on your shoulder because they are the clavicle, they are the keys. And there's a verse talking about, I will place on his shoulder the key. You remember this one I just showed you not long ago, and I'm talking about, look at the collarbone. Looks like devil horns. And when it spins, it looks like angel wings. And I can't remember if I said, well, what's like that famous saying about this? It's like the devil and the angels are on your shoulder. Well, it's ironic that, isn't it, when we talk about that weird doors, yet the collarbone, the shoulders, is the key. So we've all got this talk about angels and evil, Satan, devil at your door. Well, it's like that term, the devil come knocking. The devil's always knocking at the door. VI here, and if it means, in Latin, it means violence. Violently, or vis or force. Vi, so it's force, it's violence. Evil, as you can see on screen now. If you cover the Vi now, you now get El, Elohim, Elyon. And remember, what did it show you that you could be made into? The letter H also is symbolic of a door. And there you go. So you got the violence, you got the force of evil. Only got to put D on evil. And what do you get? You get devil.
Produce your own energy. You're able to sustain and coexist with our environment. You're able to, like I said, become a level 1 civilization and utilize all of the resources of the earth and benefit the earth and the creatures of the earth at the same time.
God of the Bible. The real God of the Bible.
Well, I guess it's time to grab the holy water and buckle in.
That's what it's about. That's what happens. That's what the whole Bible is about.
The real God of the Bible.
Me and a face, eyes, ears, a nose and a mouth. He had arms, hands, legs and feet, and a chest and a back. He was equipped with a heart, a tongue, teeth and genitals. He was a god who breathed in and out. This was a deity who not only looked like a human, albeit on a far more impressive, glamorous scale, but who very often behaved like a human. He enjoyed evening strolls and hearty meals. He listened to music, wrote books, and made lists. He was a god who not only spoke, but whistled, laughed, shouted, wept, and talked to himself. He was a god who fell in love and into fights, a god who squabbled with his worshippers and grappled with his enemies, a god who made friends, raised children, took wives, and had sex.
The God of the Bible is often misunderstood. Those who cherish this God have manipulated the actual reality of the texts. he appears most frequently, the Bible. And yes, I said he, because God is described vividly as being a masculine warrior, just like the rest of the known ancient Near Eastern gods. We will unravel the mystery of who the real God of the Bible is by showing you exactly what he looked like. Notice I'm using looked like in the past tense. This is because the ongoing interpretations of the texts describing this God have buried his physical existence in a black hole of philosophy.
Yo, yo, yo! Here we go! This is a Pinkwinati production. From the Sagittarius arm Earth to the Orion planet. Welcome to your new Earth. Welcome to your new normal.
They have buried God into a metaphysical grave by ignoring the obvious texts which describe him. I want to be upfront and say this documentary is inspired by Professor Francesca Stavrakopoulou's absolute goldmine book, God and Anatomy. This book is one of the greatest reads I have ever come across pertaining to bringing God back to life in his original setting, the ancient Near East. For those who don't know, Francesca Stavrakopoulou is a British biblical scholar and broadcaster. She's currently professor of Hebrew Bible and ancient religion at the University of Exeter. Her frustration with people completely ignoring these ancient texts for their theological limitations is also my frustration. I want to know the truth, meaning what does the evidence actually say? Can we come to actually see the God of the Bible for what he would have looked like if we situate him in his historical cultural context? I share the desire to see this God I once devoted my everything to in his actual context. For most of my early life, I believed in the supernatural, where God resides, and that this God was actively controlling this world and its fate. The closest I would come to seeing God was in my imagination, mind, or dreams. I would often equate this God with Jesus and could put a face to God through the New Testament image of Christ. As I started studying the Bible without my theological baggage, I discovered a whole new amazing world around the Bible. Here's an analogy. Imagine being at a David Blaine magic show with thousands in attendance. A person wearing a hoodie in the back corner away from the rest of the crowd whispers, "Hey you, would you like to know exactly how he does his tricks?" Imagine I respond, "What do you mean by trick? David has actual powers. He actually has the ability to do the things we are witnessing." This person insists that David is performing an illusion, doesn't actually have powers. They say, "I can show you how man-made this whole show really is if you're interested." My response is a bit bewildered because I believed that David had the actual powers to perform real magic. I answer, sure, I'm interested in seeing how he does it. In my mind, I'm extremely skeptical that this is just an illusion. And I'm also really afraid of my deepest convictions of the magical world being just an illusion shattered. Part of me wants to really know, and the other part is just afraid. I follow him behind the curtain, and he shows me the wizard with its excellent ability to create an illusion which gives a mass placebo to the auditorium. I now know it's a trick. But does that take away my excitement? Does this ruin the fun? For me, it made me ask this person, "Show me more." My desire to understand at a far, far deeper level has been unlocked. From this point onward, I hang out in the David Blaine shows with my dark hoodie, whispering to the crowd, "Do you really want to know how he does it?" Understanding the Bible, which also entails the God central to it, is a bit like this magic show. Francesca Stavrakopoulou gets it. She sees behind the curtain of theological trickery and shows you God as he really is, or really was. She describes how as an undergraduate in college, she found the feminist scholars took aim at the maleness of God in scripture and how they would just remove God's body from the equation to solve these gender issues. She recounts her engaging in a Q&A with a Christian professor who insisted on the corporeal context of God's body to be metaphorical or poetic. She soberly expresses herself.
Everyone else in the room seemed remarkably content with this approach to the God of the Bible, but I found it deeply frustrating. Why should I look past the clear image of God as a gigantic man with a heavy tread, weapons in his hands, and breath as hot as sulfur? A God who took on a monstrous sea dragon in a physical fight and won. A God who walked about in his heavenly garden and in the cemeteries of his people. A God who stripped a woman naked and offered her up to be gang mutilated. A God who sat on a throne in a temple, enjoying the aroma of scorched animal fat as he waited for his dinner. A God who not only had children, but who willingly and willfully offered up his beloved son to be killed as a sacrifice. How could I not be distracted? Here was a deity just like those I'd visited in museums as a child, a God of ancient myths, fantastic stories and long-lost rituals, a God from the distant past, from a society utterly unlike our own. Those were the terms on which I wanted to encounter him, not as a distant and abstract being, but as the product of a particular culture, at a particular time, made in the image of the people who lived then. A God shaped by their own physical circumstances, their own view of the world, and their own imaginations.
The God which is expressed in her book, God and Anatomy, and of course this documentary,
is the deity as his ancient worshippers saw him, a supersized, muscle-bound, good-looking God with suprahuman powers, earthly passions, and a penchant for the fantastic and the monstrous.
Following Dr. Stavrakopoulou's book, I will highlight the strong takeaways from her work in this documentary. However, you must understand that her book is so unbelievably fantastic. You would be committing an unforgivable sin not purchasing a copy. It goes into several sources we won't be able to cover in this video. I will also follow her chapter titles for each section as she performs an examination of God's body and will attempt to follow along with the flow of her book. She doesn't shy away from looking at every part of this male deity, shocking to most. She even reveals God's family jewels, which played a significant part in producing godly offspring. Doesn't this imply God might have a wife or a partner? Maybe she will watch this and appreciate Myth Vision's dedication to stay true to her research and to credit her for her brilliant masterpiece. Thank you, Francesca. Here's to you, my friend. Dissecting the Divine. Spanning back in time, even before written history, humans have made gods into their own images. We all know the famous biblical cliche, we are all made in the image of God. However, experts in the study of mind and cultures have known for a long time the way people think and the biases they have play a big role in how they imagine and create the idea of gods or a higher power in their societies. More than 2,500 years ago, during the late 500s or 400s BCE, a Greek thinker and explorer named Xenophanes of Colophon already figured this out.
If cattle and horses or lions had hands or were able to draw with their hands and do the works that men can do, horses would draw the forms of the gods like horses and cattle like cattle, and they would make their bodies such as they each had themselves.
Xenophanes saw the problem that each culture had a god in their own image. He saw that these gods from all over acted very much like humans, which he saw as an issue for the divine. Looking at how Homer and Hesiod paint the gods as having committed acts unbefitting for the gods by stealing, committing adultery, and tricking each other. His philosophy led him to denounce gods being human-like by their actions, thoughts, or nature. He was also one of the earlier Greek poets and philosophers who can be credited in nudging things toward monotheism. Later, Greek minds like Plato, 429 to 347 BCE, and Aristotle, 384 to 322 BCE, and schools of thought carrying this torch, taught that the ultimate power that supports and creates everything in the universe doesn't have a physical form. It's an invisible, unseen force or mind that's completely different from the world we can touch and see. Most common folk still held the idea of the gods having bodies like us. These philosophical ideas would eventually have Jewish and Christian thinkers separate their idea of God from the material world, with God dwelling in the spiritual, heavenly realm, completely divorced from the earthly, human one. Thanks to Plato's influence for influencing Western constructions of God, these philosophical notions are not compatible with the Bible. God is clearly expressed in anthropomorphic terms, which simply means God has attributes or qualities very human-like, because this is exactly how these ancient authors understood their God.
Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground."
Have you ever noticed the plural description of God creating man and woman? This is clearly the divine entourage with God who participate in creating mankind. But most don't pay attention to the description of making man in God's image. At least most theologically minded believers. That is because man was made to look like the gods. Yes, that's right. According to Genesis, Adam and Eve were made to look just like God, visually, which made humans superior to all other creatures. You might be shocked or skeptical, but a few chapters later, we get a closer description of what is implied by being made in the image of someone.
When Adam had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness, in his own image, and he named him Seth.
Elsewhere, we see that divine statues are the visual likeness of the gods they represent. Genesis 1 creation was potentially written in the 5th century, drawing on older myths portraying a god named Yahweh who just ruled Jerusalem, but today is seen as the universal God. When this was written, Yahweh was chief deity among many gods similar to the Babylonian Marduk or Zeus from the Greek world. He was still centuries away from being seen as without a body. As Francesca says in the book,
Instead, he was just like any other deity in the ancient world. He had a head, hair, and a face, eyes, ears, a nose, and a mouth. He had arms, hands, legs, and feet, and a chest and a back. He was equipped with a heart, a tongue, teeth, and genitals. He was a god who breathed in and out. This was a deity who not only looked like a human, albeit on a far more impressive, glamorous scale, but who very often behaved like a human. He enjoyed evening strolls and hearty meals. He listened to music, wrote books, and made lists. He was a god who not only spoke, but whistled, laughed, shouted, wept, and talked to himself. He was a god who fell in love and into fights, a god who squabbled with his worshippers and grappled with his enemies, a god who made friends, raised children, took wives, and had sex.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
This dog looks so confused when he caught a water bottle his owner threw at him. They look at each other in silent shock until his owner says something.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
His dog definitely broke character for a minute there.
We're out standing on a frozen lake in interior Alaska, outside of the University of Alaska Fairbanks campus. And this ice is already about 20 centimeters thick. So as it's been freezing up, methane gas has been coming out of the bottom of the lake and getting trapped in the lake ice. If you look at the shore, you see that there are lots of trees that are falling in the lake and they're dying. What's happening is the permafrost is thawing. The ice that was in the ground, when it melts, causes the ground surface to collapse. Then the forest falls in, and any organic matter, dead plant and animal remains that were in the permafrost, thaw out in the bottom of the lake. Microbes decompose it, and it generates methane. And methane doesn't like to stay in water in solution. It forms bubbles, and those bubbles make their way to the surface.
What's your emergency?
Yeah, hey, send somebody quick. There's two girls fighting over me.
Sir?
Yeah, hurry, because the ugly one is winning so far.
Babe, I gotta tell you something. Just please don't be mad, okay?
No, talk to me, shorty. What's up? Talk to me.
I used to be a Christian.
Christian? I thought you was gonna say something serious.
You not mad?
Nah, I'm not mad.
Oh, okay, good, because honestly, I'm so much happier being a Christina.
What? What'd you say?
Well, I guess it's time to grab the holy water and buckle in.
Raised children and had sex.
She expresses that this isn't something on some old clay tablets of mythologies about gods. This is the clear language of the Bible. This Bible is made of several books with various genres, with the first parts of the Bible being the Hebrew original called Tanakh by Judaism and Old Testament by Christians. The Tanakh was written between the 8th and 2nd centuries BCE in Judah. Judah was the areas we call today Palestine, Israel, Jordan, Jordan, Lebanon, and western Syria. Judah was conquered by Assyria in the 8th century BCE, again by Babylon in the 6th century BCE, and was part of the Persian Empire in the 5th century BCE. Then they were brought into Alexandria when Alexander the Great brought the empire around 333 BCE. The biblical texts express these changes from political empire to the next, while giving fun stories of very ancient mythical and legendary heroes. It contains oracles claimed to come from various prophets, as well as poetry, ritual songs, prayers, and teachings. Absolutely none of these texts have made it down to us in their original form, with scribes recreating, making additions, revisions, all to reflect the interest of later generations. It's safe to say that the Torah and the remainder of the primary history portray God's special relationship with Israelites. These authors crafted a past for their heritage, giving them a unique identity. Much of the writings that discuss historical events should be taken with a grain of salt. While there is real events described in some of the material, non-biblical material has shown us the Bible's portrayal of past events should not be taken as reliable recorded history. Don't believe me? Well, take the 9th century BCE northern kingdom of Israel ruler named Omri. In the biblical texts, he is demoted and insignificant, with only a mention of founding Samaria. A stone monument set up by Mesha, the king of Moab, a place near ancient Israel, celebrates taking back large areas of land from Omri, king of Israel, and his follower, who had ruled over Moab for a long time. Records from Assyria, a powerful empire during the 9th and 8th centuries BCE, often refer to the kingdom of Israel as Omri land and its kings as sons of Omri, showing that Omri's influence lasted a long time. However, the writer of the books of Kings in the Bible downplayed or even hid how important Omri was. This is hinted at by a brief mention of the rest of the acts of Omri and the power that he showed. It's obvious the biblical authors had Jerusalem as their central focus, with the only legitimate worship of Yahweh. Problem was, there were several Yahweh temples in town, and these authors portrayed Judah's kings who closed them down as righteous. Archaeology has revealed an 8th century BCE southern Judah Yahweh fortress, another in the 5th century Egyptian island of Elephantine, as well as a 5th to 2nd century BCE Mount Gerizim site. Point being, the worship of Yahweh was not as centralized as these elite authors penned it to be in the Bible. The Hebrew Bible is so driven by ideology that it is often unreliable, living with the trauma of the Babylonian troubles leading into the Persian Empire, potentially starting the literary works we see today. During the Second Temple period, scribes and priests were successful and reworked old texts, creating new ones through the perception of exile, return, and restoration. Of course, the texts exaggerate that all Judahites experienced restoration, but reality shows only the elites and some of the higher classes had even been deported to Babylonia, and the majority remained there in Judah. Many Judahites migrated to various locations like Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Levant during these heated political times. Eventually, Greece takes over from Persia, where most Jewish peoples read in Aramaic and Greek. This led the reading of their sacred scriptures in these languages. Among them were the Jewish Jesus movement, which took on a life of its own over a few generations, with all their literature, gospels, epistles written in Greek, and their text overshadow the Hebrew scriptures as time goes by. Okay, back to God's body. There isn't a single place anywhere in the Bible denying God's body. In fact, it is only affirmed. Some mortals were lucky enough to see it. After leaving Egypt, a group of Israelite leaders went up to Mount Sinai and saw what they believed were God's feet, and then God himself. Moses was among them, and he's said to have had a regular friendly chat with God. as if talking to a friend. But Moses wasn't the only one who reportedly encountered God in person. In the Bible's Genesis, Abraham walks with God, and Jacob wrestles with him. The prophets Isaiah and Ezekiel, in the books named after them, both describe seeing God on his throne, while Amos sees him standing in a temple. In the New Testament, Jesus claims he has seen God and is even described as sitting next to God in heaven. One may point to Adam walking with God in the cool of the day, or Stephen from the book of Acts. Also, John in Revelation on the island of Patmos. During the Second Temple period, circa 515 BCE to 70 CE, when the temple was destroyed, people understood God to hide his body from the world not visible to most humans. Just because a body can't be seen doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The Ten Commandments hint at a suggestion to the idea of making images of God was a normal practice by those worshiping Yahweh.
You shall not make for yourself a carved image, whether in the likeness of what is in the heavens above, or what is on the earth below, or what is in the waters beneath the earth.
The Israelites were no different than their next-door neighbors. People believed that while gods usually stayed hidden in their heavenly homes, they could choose to show themselves on earth as statues and places of worship. These statues weren't just symbols. People believed that statues were the actual God, not just a representation of them. People today think this is stupid. However, that's misrepresenting these ancient minds. They perceived reality not just to the physical, but from natural to supranatural. They saw these realms to be passable in both directions. These gods could technically be in more than one place in their world. Francesca mentions how ancient Mesopotamian ritual experts comment on the gods.
The divine statue was born in heaven and made on earth.
Technically, these gods weren't limited to one location. They could be invisible in the heavens, at the same time showing up as stars, statues in places of worship, figurines at home, or even natural or even invisible forces on earth. But I can hear the apologists say, the ban on images is evidence that God didn't have a body and shouldn't be portrayed in idols, making this God different. You are wrong, my friends. Several cults from Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, and the Phoenicians practice what's called aniconism. Aniconism is when religions or cultures don't create images or figures to represent things from the natural world, the supernatural, or certain beings. You can find this in Buddhism as well as Islam. Shoot, it even shows up in certain places in Hinduism. And while these earlier cults practiced imageless worship, they were understood to have bodies. Prohibiting divine images in the Ten Commandments points towards God's hiddenness of his body, not that he didn't have one. This idea is a step in the direction of the abstract, incorporeal deity of the post-biblical religions of Judaism and Christianity. The Bible describes God as having a human-like form, a personal name, a history, a family, and even a group of heavenly beings that accompany him. God of the Bible.
They deliberately did this to hide from the profane people the powers that are in the inner consciousness, because they didn't want literal people getting a hold of these mysteries and using them for their own good. I mean, do you want to spend your life going and listening to preachers? Do you want to spend your life reading the Bible, half of which you can't relate to anyhow, 3/4 of which you can't relate to? Or do you want to now spend your life being a participant in God's universe and touching him within you? That's the difference. The book of Revelation is about your body. The two witnesses that are spoken of in the book of Revelation are the pineal gland in your brain and the pituitary gland, the master gland in your brain. Did you know that? And that all of the fighting that goes on and all of the different nations and the rivers and the seas all deal with your endocrine system of your body and that which is the upheaval in your body. And God, through revelation in the hidden mysteries of the East, is giving you directions on how you can put all of this together and how you can get your body and your mind in harmony. The Bible was not written by people from Pittsburgh. The Bible was written by the ancient Eastern people, and they knew numerology. They knew numerology. By the ancient Eastern people, and they knew numerology. They dwelled in the numbers of the zodiac. They dwelled in all various numbers that had meanings. Let me give you a quick rundown so you get an idea what I'm talking about. Hidden meanings. The number 1 means God, the Logos. The number 2 means body and soul, you and God. The number 3 means new life, resurrection, a new beginning. Jesus was in the tomb 3 days. Jonah was in the whale 3 days. The number 4 means your fourfold nature: physical, spiritual, intellectual, emotional. Okay? The number 5 means mediation. It also means sacrifice. I'm going to show you that a little later. The number 6 means doctrines, laws, religion. Number 7 means divine intervention. Joshua walked around Jericho how many times? 7. And the walls came tumbling down. 7 means divine intervention. There are 7 nerve centers, or 7 chakras that rise from the base of the spine to the top, which are the 7 levels which a person walks in order to find that which is the pineal or enlightenment. It's all part of the Bible. It's all part of the ancient wisdom, which is covered up in Numbers. Number 8 means rupture, separation. Number 9 means the human consciousness. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Number 10 means completion. And the number of perfection in Hebrew is 12, which corresponds to the most ancient zodiac. Let's take a look at the number 9. The numerical value to the word Adam in Hebrew in the ancient scriptures is 9. Everything had a numerical value, and that's why there is such mystery in the ancient scriptures, because they use numbers to deceive people who tried to think intellectually. The number 9 means Adam. Adam means earth. The earth means your flesh, your mind, your emotions, the ego, the macho, the I will do what I think, and all this kind of business, okay? So when you use that number 9, it starts to reveal a lot of things to you. If you look in the Bible, you'll see many references to 3.5 or 42 months, 3.5 years, 42 months. It all comes out to 9. Let me show you how. You'll see it as 42 months. You'll see it as 3.5 years. You'll see it as 1,260 days, because 3.5 years is 6 months. Okay, is 3 years and 6 months. That's 42 months. You take 42 times 30, you get 1,260. Okay, now when you add 1, 2, and 6, you get 9. That's the number of human consciousness. That's the Bible's way of hiding from the literal and the intellectual, spiritual, significant, deep mysteries that come out of the times of Egypt and Chaldea. They deliberately did this to hide from the profane people the powers that are in the inner consciousness, because they didn't want literal people getting a hold of these mysteries and using them for their own good or to raise money the way these evangelists and TV people do. Okay, this isn't for that. This should not cost you a dime. I'll give you a symbol. Tithing. How much money are these people made taking 10% out of your pocket? Tithing has nothing whatsoever to do with money. It's symbolic. It's a hidden myth. And what it means is you have 10% of you that is the carnal mind. 10% of you is the left side, it is the negative side, it is the carnal mind. 90% of you is the right hemisphere, which is dormant. God is saying to you, give me that 10%. Give me your ego. Give me your flesh. Give me your will. Through meditation, shut off the thoughts of the mind. You shut off the 10%, which is you. You turn on the right hemisphere, which is the 90%, which is him. You have tithed. Now, let's look at the number 9. 3.5 months, 3.5 years, 42 months, they all equate to 1,260 days. If you look through the book of Revelation, you'll see all kinds of references to 3.5, 42, 1,260. They all add up to 9. So now when you have that key, that the number 9 means human consciousness, you can solve some riddles. You can solve the identity of the beast. Who is the beast? 666. Okay? Who is 666? This is the way you have to do it if you understand Eastern mysticism that wrote that. You take 6 plus 6 equals 12 plus 6 equals 18. Now you have 1, 8. 1 plus 8 equals 9. The identity of the beast is you and me, our lower carnal mind. It's the beast that rapes. It's the beast that makes wars. All of these horrible things that you read about every day in your newspaper and see every day on your television. And we can look at the beast by going into our bathroom, turning on the light, and there's a picture of the beast right over your sink. It is your lower mind. It is that part of you that threatens you, part of you that convinces you you're not going to make it past tomorrow, that part of you that says, well, everything's okay now, but what are you going to do if, and what are you going to say when you meet so-and-so next week, and all of this stuff that keeps you rattling and shaking and all of those things within you going nuts. That's the beast. That's hell. What about those who are saved? What about those who are going to heaven? In Revelation 14, it says 144,000. That means an endless number of saved. But look at the number, 144. 1 plus 4 equals 5, plus 4 equals what? 9. 9 means consciousness. The beast is the lower consciousness. Those who are saved are the higher consciousness, the upper room, the mountain experience, meditation. When you lift yourself up above, you come into being that 144 or consciousness in the higher realm. So 9 then means consciousness, and it shows either on the lower level, which is the devil or hell of the carnal mind, on the higher level, which is the divine mind. There's an interesting way you can see how the Bible specifically shoves this in, so you know it's a tip-off from the ancient people that this is talking about consciousness. Jesus says to the fellows in the boat, look, if you want to catch fish, cast your net over to the right side of the boat, okay? What Jesus is talking about is not fish. Fish means wisdom. He's not talking about the right side of the boat. He's talking about directing your energy to the right hemisphere of the mind. You do that by turning off the left side in meditation. Now, how do we know? Now that we know that the number 9 means consciousness, how do we know that Jesus is talking about consciousness and not fish? You'll see there in that scripture, when Jesus says, cast your net to the right side, you'll see how many fish they caught. They caught 153 fish. Okay? 1 plus 5 plus 3 equals 9. 9 means consciousness. Therefore, Jesus is definitely saying, if you want to be filled with God's wisdom, if you want to be filled with God's understanding, if you want to be filled with God's knowledge of this universe and your place in it, then direct your energies to the right hemisphere. And Jesus told you how to do that by taking no thought. You must meditate. You must allow your eye to be single. You focus that energy right between your eyes and your forehead, and you focus energy there, and you bring yourself above all of those thoughts which are trying to destroy you. You bring yourself up into the bliss of the heaven which is within you, and then you fill with wisdom, you fill with understanding, and you start to activate the right hemisphere of your brain which has been dormant all of your life. Look, you see the same thing in the sky. You see the same thing in nature. The sun right now, as we're sitting talking, the sun in the northern hemisphere is sitting at the right hand. It is sitting in the eastern sky. And what happens when it sits in the eastern, or it sits in the right hand? It brings to life all that was dormant during the winter. It's symbolic too. Paul says the unseen things of God should be made manifest by the things that you can see. In other words, when the sun in the heavens sits at the right hand of power in the eastern sky in the northern hemisphere, summer comes. Everything which was dormant during the winter is gone. Now there are flowers, now there is color, now there is new life. This is what it means. When the Son of Man, the desires of the flesh, the solar plexus is raised to the pineal, the light is at its highest, the power sits at the right hemisphere of the brain, okay? And that then brings to life all that was been dormant in your life during the winter of your soul. Doesn't it make sense?
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
This channel does not promote or encourage any illegal activities. All contents provided by this channel is meant for educational purpose only.
Let's look at the year. How many months are there in a year? 12. Exactly. How many weeks are there in a year? 52. Good. However, 12 months, well, 12 times 4 is 48. And 52 minus 4 is 48. Doesn't take a genius to work out we've got 4 extra weeks. And what do 4 weeks make? A month. There are actually 13 months in a year. We are being paid for 12 months' work, and we are doing 13 months' work a year.
So here's the dry mixing container. This is the level of sensitivity we're talking about, okay? So here,
being touched. By mixing together a specific set of fairly common chemicals, including household ammonia and hydrogen peroxide, you can create this black, sticky paste. Touching it after it dries results in an explosive reaction, and it must be handled with extreme care because this paste hates being touched. Results in an explosive reaction, and it must be handled with extreme care because this paste hates being touched. By
Dude, it's underwater. Dude, it's underwater. Stick, and there's one just the same size on my hand. Dude, it's underwater.
Spiders are so fucking weird, bro. What the hell?
That is CPR being administered to somebody by a machine.
Why couldn't the farmer find his cows? Because they moved. Why do cows wear bells? Because their horns don't work.
Alright, we just stopped on the side of these cactuses. Just look like really off. Let me zoom in for you guys. Look at that. Those don't look like cactuses. And what is that right there? Is that like a camera or something? Let's go check it out.
Meu Deus, meu Deus.
About. This is what the hidden meanings of the Bible are about. Everything that is out is in and is all within you and at your hands to activate it and call it into active participation in your life now. And it's never too late. If you're 8 or if you're 98, it doesn't make any difference, because once you raise your consciousness above the thoughts of the mind, there is no age. Lucifer was never a person, was never intended to be a person, was never anybody by the name Lucifer. Lucifer means bright star. Okay? And the reason the name is given Lucifer, the star, and the reason the star, because it has 5 points. Sight, taste, touch, smell, hearing. Bright star. That means when your senses, your ego, are under control of the higher realm of God, then Lucifer. That means everything is under God's control. Fine. But when that star falls, remember Jesus said, I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning, the falling star. That means the 5 senses are now under the control of the ego. Sight, taste, touch, smell, and hearing are under your control. And then we got the problems with sex, we got the problems with drugs, we got the problems with booze, we got the problems with our mouth, we got the problems with gossip, we got the problems with the things we see, we got all the problems with the things that we do. We are now in hell. Satan has arrived. That's what it means. Now, once this star fell, and once the 5 senses come under the control of the ego, okay, and this is what it means, how then are the 5 senses returned back up into the higher realm? There must be the sacrifice of the 5 senses. You've got to give the 5 senses up. You do that by taking no thought. But let me show you how the Bible describes it. Jesus comes along, and what happens? He takes the 5 wounds, doesn't he? His hands, 2, his feet, 2, and his side, bang, 5 wounds. And as soon as he takes that 5th wound, he becomes the Christ. He then ascends spiritually, and the 5 senses are returned to God. They fell with Lucifer to Satan. They return to the higher place with God. When the flesh is sacrificed, then the Christ consciousness ascends. That's exactly what the mission is for you. You see, all of this happened where? It happened in Golgotha. Golgotha means skull, which means it's consciousness. People say, oh, he doesn't believe it really happened. It doesn't make any difference. The point is, does it happen now? Does it happen for you? How can you make this? I mean, do you want to spend your life going and listening to preachers? Do you want to spend your life reading the Bible, half of which you can't relate to anyhow, 3/4 of which you can't relate to? Or do you want to now spend your life being a participant in God's universe and touching him within you? That's the difference. If so, then those 5 wounds must be taken spiritually as Christ, rising with him into the higher consciousness above human thought, in the skull, Golgotha, okay? Let me show you how the 5 wounds are acted out in your body. It happens to everybody. The whole message is the changing of the five senses of the ego into one, into a oneness with God, right? Well, let me show you how this happens. When you're born, and you can ask any good chiropractor this, when you're born, you have 33 vertebrae. But between the age of 1 and 6, there are 5 vertebrae at the base of your spine area, which fuse into one, and they become the foundation on which you stand. It happens. It happened to you. A miraculous thing happened, or not miraculous, that's a bad word, a natural thing happened to also show you, just as the sun in the sky does, what happens with Lucifer, what happens with Jesus, what happens with the 5 changing into one. Between the age of 1 and 6, the 5 bottom vertebrae in your spine fuse together and become one. The 5 changes into one, and that becomes the foundation upon which you stand. And do you know what they call that place in your spine? The sacrum. You know what it means? It means the sacred place, the holy place. And the reason they call it the sacred place or the holy place is because the 5 has come into being one. And that becomes your foundation. That becomes the entire foundation of Scripture. That becomes the foundation of the fall of man when the 5 are taken over by the ego, becomes the foundation of the resurrection of man when the 5 are given back through meditation and you rise up into Christ consciousness. That's what it's about. That's what happens. That's what the whole Bible is about.
That's right. That's right. Fremont. I have a message from something not human given directly to me. I feel to share it. Yes, please do so. That's the entire point of the ordinance. Can you come up? More difficult circumstances await your planet, in which your material and moral depressions have increased and will increase. The announcements of these days you're going through in the dimension of transition were given and declared to you centuries ago with your sacred books. The evil eye. Henceforth, awakenings are not individual, but they concern the masses. For this reason, all the channels opened are exposed to the positive or negative influences of the influence zones surrounding your planet. The program of opening of the channels, in accordance with the levels of consciousness and training of the individuals by this means, is in effect under the supervision of the system. Since there's a transition from positive consciousnesses sequentially towards the more negatives, in consciousness's channels to be opened, and since more non-evolved consciousnesses will come into effect in future years and centuries, the decision to notify clearly all the truths to humanity with the knowledge book has been taken in hand. While your planet is suffocated under the negative roof of this negative consciousness, the system is taking the positive consciousnesses into a special protective channel by the work that they will exhibit in the direction of their intellect, logic, awareness, totality, established by them. In order for each individual to be able to enter these special protection channels, it is imperative that she or he should reach the spirit of unification and totality, and thus should avoid individual actions. This is a hierarchical procedure. For this reason, the first announcements of evolution have always been given about love. All humane totalities have adopted the hierarchy of respect for the human, respect for the medium, respect for the system, respect for the whole, have always been crowned with crowns of triumph until today. These consciousnesses are those who have reached the supremacy of the ability to embrace their enemies by integrating love within the essence. On your planet that is preparing for the program of universal totality, a great consciousness selection is in effect during this period in which you are living in right now. This section is never made by the supreme realm. Each living being included makes this sorting person in accordance with his or her evolution, and thus eliminates and renders him or herself ineffective. I was told I have no more trouble. Well, it's true. All your problems will be taken in hand, my dear Latasha. Now, humanity receives the evolution influences first by its religious consciousness. Later, it enters the influence of love, and in turn, provided that this influence is integrated with their essences, the individual dives into the knowledge influence zones. You receive celestial knowledge in two ways. Number one, the first way is the path of complete allegiance. Number two, the second way is the path of integrating with society and assisting humanity. The knowledge book is the surest path that prepares you for evolution with the second path, and thus assists you to receive the cosmic influences and to become conscious.
They didn't kill him. They didn't kill him. In Harvard Library, there is a book of Jesus' wife at the Harvard Seminary School. And they found that about 8 years ago.
Jesus' wife is the Mary Magdalene?
Yeah.
So she was not actually...
They're assuming it's Mary Magdalene. It doesn't specifically say, but we're assumed that it is, which means he probably had kids, and his Merovingian bloodline is still probably walking the land till this very day.
This has been a Cincinnati production. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos. If you'd like to support the channel, links are in the description.